Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're all good and your glasses are refueled. We're ready for our next presentation. So we've got an actual story here from Charlie, who is a future trainee at Clyde Co. He's going to be talking all about his journey and how he got to where he is now and where he's going to be on his training contract. And we also have Afraz, who is an early careers coordinator at Clyde Co. So I'll pass you over to them. As always, any questions you've got, put them in the Q&A tab and I'll ask them directly to Afraz and Charlie afterwards. And if there's anything really burning, I think Afraz is gonna scout through the chat as well and answer anything as we go. But I'll hand you over to them. And yeah, really looking forward to this one.
Thank you for that, Emma. So, hi guys, I am Charlie Stabler. I am a future trainee at Clyde Co, and I'm going to be undertaking my LPC in 2022 and joining the firm in 2023. I'd just like to thank you all for taking your time out of your day to listen to me speak. I know you've had a lot of talk from partners, so as a trainee, I'm sort of a bit lower down the scale, but I'd just like to talk to you a bit about my background, my sort of process at university, and my process of entering the legal sector. Before I started, I just want to put a couple of disclaimers out there. I'm going to be talking quite openly about my experiences at school, at university, and with Clyde. This isn't sort of a pleading of poverty or anything along those lines, but I just think it's best if I'm open and as honest as possible with you guys. The second disclaimer is that I understand there are still a lot of discrepancies in the legal sector between different marginalised groups, whether that be regarding ethnicity, gender, sexuality, disabilities, and I'm probably not the best placed person to talk about this, but I am going to be touching on these subjects a little bit and what Clyde do to try and facilitate access for such groups, because I think social mobility can be a driving force for these issues. These marginalised groups often end up towards the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum, and I think that it's important that I do try and talk about it a bit. So a little bit about me. I attended a state comprehensive school in Yorkshire. It's estimated that 93% of students in the country at school level go to a state school. Yet only 35% of senior judges actually attended state school. So you can see there is quite a wide discrepancy between those two, and it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. At school, we had a little map showing where all the different people from my sixth form attended. And one thing that I remember really vividly was a distinct absence of sort of Russell Group universities and the amount of people that actually took law as a degree. I think from the previous 3 years that were listed on the map, I remember two from probably about 200 people that actually did law. So it did seem almost quite inaccessible for me from even the start of sixth form. Another big discrepancy that I have noted was the amount of my friends that sort of left school after GCSEs to attend college to do sort of more practical trades or courses at college that they facilitate. And this led to me having quite a subsided network in terms of when I was applying for uni, going through the UCAS process. And it did leave me feel slightly more isolated than I'd anticipated. There was less people I could talk to discuss their sort of approaches to applying and how they were finding it all. As stated here, I'm also a first generation university student. Nobody in my immediate family, parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles or anything like that, have attended university. And I'd like to reiterate the fact that my family are incredibly supportive, my parents are incredibly supportive, but there was a distinct lack of understanding when I was going through the UCAS process as to what was expected of me. They couldn't offer me as much guidance when I was constructing my personal statement. And when I was trying to organise open days, I sort of took this all on my own back to facilitate attending different universities. And along my A-levels, like obviously that built up a bit of pressure, sort of having to tackle it head on by myself. My parents, as I say, are incredibly supportive, but there was a distinct lack of understanding on the basis that neither of them had ever attended university. And furthermore, since I've been at university, a lot of my friends have older siblings that have attended university. You know, their parents went and they were people that they could turn to and discuss issues that arise at university. And I felt kind of isolated again in that sense, that there wasn't as much scope for me to talk to my family about such things. I think it's really important to note that for first generation university students, it's been noted that they're less likely to attend elite institutes, and they've also got a higher dropout rate. So this is obviously something that needs to be addressed in the future. So before I talk about my university experience, I want to briefly touch on some work experience that I did at school in year 10. I was fortunate enough at the time that there was a dedicated careers advisor at the school. However, I know this has since been phased out, and I think I was the last year to be able to undertake work experience. So this was massively beneficial for me, but I understand that it's not something that all people from a state school background get the opportunity to undertake. I'm a final year law student at the University of Nottingham, it says there. One of the first things that sort of took me back when I came to uni were comments about my background, you know, when you're introducing yourself to people that you've relatively only recently just met. And these comments can come in the form of banter, and it's never really intended to be malicious, but they can sort of knock your confidence for six when you're coming to university. I received a lot of comments about like stereotypes about northern people, stereotypes about state schools, and it wasn't the best start to my university. As I say, I don't think there was any malicious intent there, but it did sort of knock my confidence for six. At university, I've got a part-time job to supplement my income from my student loan. This is necessary for me to, you know, even be able to afford to pay my rent or my utility bills and just general sort of life. Over holidays, I've always had a full-time job, and this was noticeably different to some of my cohort, whether it be my friends from my halls or friends from my course. And undertaking this job, it has affected sort of my ability to study. It's taken me a while to be able to strike a balance between earning any kind of substantial income and balancing my uni work, which is an issue that people that are from the higher end of the social spectrum don't really appreciate. And it does take a lot of time out of my actual time at uni, trying to get this income to be able to afford to stay here, basically. A final point to note about university that I think is I did feel really out of my depth when I came to university. I'd achieved good grades at school. I'd always sort of been towards the top end of the class. And one thing I noted was when I came to university, you do feel like a small fish in a big pond. You're with people who are obviously on the same wavelength in terms of grades. And these are people that have attended grammar schools, private schools, where they're used to being sort of with other people that are achieving similar sort of high grades. So that also affected my confidence a bit. I did feel out of place. I've also mentioned the 93% club here. And as I said, 93% of school students go to state school. And most universities, I know Nottingham does, a lot of the Russell Group universities do, have a 93% club society. And these clubs, I cannot encourage you enough to join these societies because they push for increasing intervention and access for state school students into sort of elite sectors, whether that be finance, banking, or law. So, as I say, I'm a trainee solicitor. Well, I'm going to be a trainee solicitor at Clyde Co in 2 years. And my first experience with Clyde was on the Bright Futures scheme. The Bright Futures scheme is aimed at students from a lower socioeconomic background and includes a paid week in a department. I sat in the tax department. There's 9 months of mentoring with further re-engagement sessions where you network and we learn about the finance of running a legal firm, and we had the opportunity to have a mock assessment centre for the vacation scheme, which was really beneficial for me. The networking was fantastic. I made a lot of good connections at the firm, all the way from trainees to associates to partners, as well as the people that were on my cohort, which have been really beneficial for me going forward, applying for different schemes and getting their thoughts on different firms. There is also the benefit of a fast track, potential fast track to the vacation scheme assessment centre. I think that alone is a good enough pull for anybody that is even thinking about applying for the Bright Futures scheme. At first, I was very apprehensive. This was my first insight into the world of commercial law, and that's exactly what the scheme's set up to do. But these fears were quickly subsided. The early careers team and the rest of my cohort, as well as the staff at Clyde, all the different lawyers, they were so welcoming to me and really put me at ease from the very start. I gained a valuable mentor in the form of an associate, and there were some outstanding socials as well on the scheme. So this really spurred me on for more with Clyde. Obviously, from there, I applied to be the campus ambassador off the back of the Bright Future scheme. This took part at the height of the pandemic in a very virtual world, but the support from Early Careers and RateMyPlacement as they helped coordinate the campus ambassadorship was fantastic, making the most of the virtual context. And it also gave me a chance to engage further with the firm ahead of the VAC, give me a bit more insight and really try and help me set me apart from other applicants. Finally, last summer, the summer just gone, I undertook a summer vacation scheme, and it was just a really memorable 2 weeks, one of the most insightful and useful 2 weeks that I've had to date. I sat on the energy, marine and construction team in insurance, and I took tasks from research questions into chemical weapons. I attended an energy forum with some of the leading figures in the energy legal sector and underwriters in insurance. I worked closely with a partner on some specific research questions, which was something that I just wasn't anticipating at all, and he gave me some really valuable advice. And also, again, the socials were second to none despite it being online. And thankfully, at the end of a vacation scheme, I got offered a training contract. One thing that I wanted to know about the VAC was the sort of progression from my Bright Future scheme cohort and the variation of applicants. So obviously the Bright Future scheme is aimed at lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and it was so great to see so many of the people that I'd attended the Bright Future scheme with given the opportunity to attend a VAC with Clyde. And I think this really speaks volumes about their push for social mobility. And the variation of the applicants from a wide range of universities, from Oxbridge, Russell Groups, other universities, different stages of their career. Many were paralegals, many had undertaken and self-funded the LPC themselves. So my experience with Clyde today has been second to none. And I mean, you can see here, I've attended every scheme that I possibly could. And I think that just speaks volumes about how much I've enjoyed my time with Clyde and how valued I've felt in return, and how welcome I felt. I wanted to touch a little bit about imposter syndrome. So here on the slide, you can see it's the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. I think it's fair to say that from people that I've spoken to and articles that I've read, that imposter syndrome is rife in the legal sector. It's a very elite sector. And especially for me, coming from the sort of background that I came from, it has been hard for me to accept that, I've worked hard to get here and I deserve a place, whether that be on the vacation scheme or now as a future trainee. And sometimes it does feel like maybe I was snuck under the radar and one day somebody will send me an email and say, oh, you weren't actually meant to be here. But to this day, it does feel a bit surreal. And I don't think my feelings towards imposter syndrome, my feeling of being an imposter will ever truly subside. I think that will definitely ease. But the main thing that I've learned from my experience so far is the importance of trying to turn it on its head. I've acknowledged the fact that I've maybe come from not the most traditional background in terms of access to the legal sector. But I affirmate with myself that I deserve what I have. I deserve what I've achieved. I'm here off my own back. I've put a lot of hard work in, and I've begun to see my background as not a problem, but it offers me a benefit, a viewpoint, and different experiences I can bring forward with me into the world of work. So I'm going to briefly talk about Clyde and social mobility. Clyde have an aim of recruiting and retaining the staff with the aim of being representative of the communities and culture in which they work. One thing that has been very clear to me throughout all my different schemes is that they really appreciate the views and benefits of the social spectrum and the differences that it brings. And the different approaches that people can draw on, can come up with, drawing on their past experiences. They see diversity and inclusion as vital to the operation, as it allows different backgrounds to thrive, and as I say, it offers different insights and different approaches to tasks. They were also striving to achieve equality between gender discrepancies, ethnic discrepancies, sexuality discrepancies, and ethnicity discrepancies. They work closely with Stonewall in terms of pushing LGBTQ plus rights and inclusion in the legal sector, as well as aspiring solicitors, which has a social mobility focus and encourages people from non-traditional backgrounds to apply for careers in law. At Clyde, to ensure the diversity of employees, they have numerous different groups set up. So they have the Gecko group set up for gender equality. They have the ACE group, which stands for Achieving Cultural and Ethnic Diversity. And they also have Pride Co, which is the LGBT group. As I've touched on briefly at the start, obviously they are distinct from social mobility in terms of social mobility. It considers socioeconomic spectrum, but I think they are really intertwined. They sort of go hand in hand, as I've touched on, because social mobility can be a driving force in minimising these discrepancies, as it's often these marginalised groups that struggle the most in terms of social status. Recently, Clyde has sort of adapted the application process. Before, when I was applying for my VAC scheme, it was very typical sort of 3 questions on your initial application: why law, why Clyde, and then a bit about in the business press about something that's interested you with relation to Clyde. So in this new process, they're taking a more of a holistic approach, considering every factor that's presented on the application process. They're undertaking a blind CV process and offering adjustments, as well as a video assessment, which is key to the process. The removal of why law questions and things like that has really brought down the application time process. It takes less of a chunk out of your valuable studies when you're applying for such things, and it also limits over screening by using this holistic approach, by way of removing underlying biases that may arise when scanning through applications. It was also noted that whereas before the required AAB grades at A level were sort of a minimum, now they are a guide and almost not the be all and end all of your application process. There is a lot of other factors that Clyde take into account. And I think this is really positive because, particularly for me, at university and through the application process, law firms have always seemed very elitist. They've always seen at the top of the top of careers almost. And for me, at one point, they did seem very inaccessible. And by removing these barriers in the application process, it makes it seem more attainable, and it does make it more attainable. The video assessment offers people to be their true self and articulate themselves. And I think this can only be deemed as a positive in terms of social mobility and for Clyde in promoting such an application process. So I'm going to briefly touch on early careers at Clyde, all the different schemes that they offer. So for all year groups, they're all entitled to virtual work experience, where you can gain practical skills and experience. You can pop this on your applications, you can pop it on your CV, and it'll be based on real experiences in the legal sector and real trends occurring in the legal sector. They also have numerous insight days. As you can see from the slide, we have they've had one that just passed on the 27th of October, but coming up, which you can register for now, I believe. On the 23rd of November, there's an introduction to projects and construction, which is quite a big part of the work that Clyde do. And on the 10th of August, there's also a broader introduction to Clyde as a firm. As I previously touched on, for first year and second year non-law students, there's a Bright Future scheme, which is a social mobility program with 9 months of mentoring and 1 week paid work experience, as well as that prized fast track interview for the vacation schemes following year. vacation schemes, they offer the winter scheme aimed at final year students, and I believe the application process is passed for that. But they also offer the spring scheme for penultimate year students, and the summer scheme, which I attended, for penultimate year students. And if you're successful in your VAC, you have the opportunity to accept a training contract with Clyde. Clyde recruit exclusively from their VAC scheme. Obviously, that's to get the best insight into their future employees. And the training contract involves 4 6-month seats in numerous different teams. There's also the opportunity to take international secondments or client secondments at Clyde. And Clyde, I believe, have over 50 different offices all around the world on 6 continents, excluding, Antarctica. So there's a real variety to apply for. And there's also GDL or LPC or SQ sponsorship and maintenance grants, which I'm lucky enough to be receiving when I undertake my LPC next year. And my fees will be paid for the LPC, and I'll also receive a maintenance grant, not based on income or anything. So that is really positive for me. That's going to really support me next year. So this is just a little bit about the recruitment process, the dates here for the deadlines. So obviously the winter vacation scheme's passed. All the programs, so the spring VAC and the summer VAC, are the 2nd of January. You can see as it follows through, you've got your online application form followed by a video assessment, followed by some screening by the firm. And then you've got the phone interview and assessment centre, which can be daunting, but I felt really at ease when I was speaking to the early careers team when I was applying for it. They guided me through questions. If they were looking for a little bit more, they'd sort of prompt me to do that. And then finally, you achieve the outcome, positive or negative. Either way, you receive feedback. I received feedback on my vacation scheme regarding my assessment centre. And I know that others that weren't quite as successful also received feedback, positive and constructive, for going forward. So that sort of brings us to the end of the presentation. I'll put Clyde's social media platforms on there. I'd like to say that if anybody wants to connect to me on LinkedIn or anything, if anyone's got any further questions about my background, my experience with Clyde, just try and find me on LinkedIn. It's just Charlie Stabler. Get in touch with Clyde on, follow them on social medias, because they are always posting different upcoming events, information about applying, advice, posting when deadlines are. And yeah, I think that's the end of my presentation.
Hey, Charlie. That was truly brilliant. Yeah, massive kudos to you, and what an incredible journey you've been on. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I think really inspirational to see that how you started off, as a campus ambassador and then moved into a VAC scheme, and yeah, just really awesome. So thanks so much for sharing such a personal story with everyone. I'm sure everybody got a lot out of it. We have about 5 minutes or so for questions. Afraz has been doing a great job and answering some as we go, but there are a couple that I think might be really interesting to get your perspective on. I don't know if you want to stop sharing your screen, Charlie, and then we can
of course.
get a bit more of a chat coming through. Awesome. So one of the questions which I think has resonated with the audience today is this feeling of being a bit out of place at university. I know that's something I can empathise with as well. How did you overcome that feeling?
So it has taken time, but I think the biggest thing is sort of building a good support network around you, people that sort of encourage you to go for things that you might not necessarily feel are attainable. I've got a lot of friends from varying different backgrounds, and they've all been incredibly supportive of me. They keep me on my toes, they keep me on track, they make sure that I'm doing all my uni work. When I was applying for VACs, they were keeping on top of me and making sure that I was applying for this kind of thing. I think that's the most valuable thing. And again, it's just reiterating to yourself that, you deserve this position at university. You've worked hard in your A-levels, and you deserve to be able to apply for these things based off the hard work that you've put in the past. I know for me, A-levels were really challenging, and I was in a pretty rubbish place during A-levels, but I pulled myself through and I achieved grades that I was really proud of. And I just had to keep on reminding myself that, even when grades aren't brilliant and when you do feel a bit middle of the pack, that you do deserve your place here. And if you carry on putting in that hard work, then you can only boost your confidence a bit more and feel like you do belong at university.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you covered imposter syndrome really nicely as well. And I think it's been a bit of a theme today, how imposter syndrome is always going to rear its head, but it's a bit of a journey, you know, that we all have to overcome at different points in our lives. There was another question around Clyde's approach, and Afaz answered this from his perspective as well, but was there anything specific about Clyde's approach that made you feel kind of welcomed and made you feel comfortable?
I mean, even before applying, the fact that the Bright Future scheme was aimed at lower socioeconomic backgrounds, it did make this sort of legal sector feel a bit closer to me, a bit more attainable. These schemes did feel a bit more attainable. So that even before I was applying, that made me think, hang on, this seemed like a really good firm. And then after I researched, I found out about the kind of work they do, which really interested me. You know, their sector focus approach, which is fantastic. They know what they are very good at, and they specialize in these, and they compete with the biggest firms in these areas. And yeah, also when I was researching the firm, finding out that the work that they do with, like I touched on the different groups, the Gecko, Pride, ACE group, and I think also the pro bono work really hit home with me. Clyde offers some fantastic pro bono opportunities to work with some of the most vulnerable in society. And these are all things in terms of social mobility and what Clyde are doing that encouraged me that this could be a firm where I could thrive and where my background and different views will really be appreciated.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. We probably have time for one or two more. Let's go with one. Then if we've got time, we can always squeeze in another one. So we've got a question here from Rukia. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And they've asked, what resources did you use to develop your commercial awareness? I know that's something that a lot of firms ask for at assessment, but what resources did you use that you found helped you?
So there are numerous different sort of really good podcasts that you can find on all platforms. I mean, all you have to do is type in commercial awareness and you'll get about 10 or 15 really positive ones. I used a lot of sort of broadsheet newspapers, seeing what was going on in the news on a weekly basis. I wasn't checking in every day, but especially when it came to the application process, knowing that I was ensuring that I knew trends in the industry, especially related to Clyde. As I say, Clyde have got this very sector-based approach, and looking for commercial awareness that relates back to the firm directly. And yeah, I just think it's about just actually like delving into the news, seeing what's going on. There are some really brilliant websites out there as well for looking at commercial awareness. But yeah, just making sure that you have a general gist of what's going on in the industry relating to the specific firm that you're wanting to apply for.
Great, really good tips. I think we'll probably leave it there. There's a couple of others that we haven't got time for around kind of Clyde's approach to social mobility and also kind of different backgrounds of clients and different people you might meet. But I think what we'll do is we'll wrap there. And if your question didn't get answered, I don't know if you've got time to pop into the employer booths, Afraz or Charlie, just to
I'll go in there now, but any questions you can email us at graduaterecruitment@clydeco.com, and we'll get back to you on that as well. I'll just go into the booth now.
Awesome. Thanks again. Honestly, that was truly brilliant, and I'm sure everyone got so much out of it. So thank you both so much.
Thank you.
And enjoy the rest of your afternoons. I feel as though we are coming to our last kind of employer session or employer talk of the day. So if you're happy to leave us, Charlie and Afraz, and head over to the employer booths, we'll get those questions over there. And for now, for everybody else, we are being met by HSBC shortly. So HSBC are coming on to talk at 4:40, all around levelling the playing field. So we will see you back here at 4:40 for HSBC. I've worked with HSBC for many years, and I know that they're super committed to this cause. So really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. So in the meantime, any more questions for Clyde & Co, pop to the employer booths, or if there's any other employers you haven't been able to connect with yet, head over there. And we'll see you in exactly 20 minutes for HSBC and why they are so committed to levelling the playing field. See you in a bit.